And you'll hear a lot more about the pioneer, all the effort that Shirley and her family and the Federation of Civil Cooperatives and all of those who were pioneers in just attacking some of the injustices that were being faced by our landowners, our farmers, our ranchers, our veterans, as they tried to ascend and sustain their farms, their property, and what have you. And in the 1990 Farm Bill, the 2501 we referenced earlier, Section 2501, was established in that Farm Bill. And one of the persons that were very instrumental in making certain that was in that Farm Bill is with us today, and that's Ms. Shirley Sherrod. Now, when I was hired by Dr. Hill to follow, I think Barbara Ryan was on the committee, a couple of others, several others on the committee. And the statement was made, smile, we can't do this without going and checking in with some folks. The very first person they asked me to go and see and visit was Shirley Sherrod, Albany, Georgia. Thank you so much. How fast forward 30 years ago. Thank you so much for that. So now, let us bring forth Kira Sherrod, who's going to actually introduce Ms. Sherrod. Sure, Sherrod.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kira Sherrod, and I am here to introduce my amazing grandmother, Shirley Sherrod. Ms. Shirley Sherrod of Albany, Georgia is a respected and outspoken advocate of Black American farmers and farming, serving as a global thought leader and news contributor on topics involving U.S. agriculture policy. A native rural Southwest Georgia, she serves as a tireless voice in pushing federal and state policy aimed to protecting Black farmers' access to capital and markets as a way of sustaining them and stemming the tide of Black land loss. She comes to her work honestly. At 17, she witnessed an all-white grand jury refuse to indict a white farmer who gunned down her father on her family farm in a dispute over livestock. It led to her lifelong commitment to ensuring justice for all Black people living in her native home, Baker County, Georgia. After her family's murder, she married civil rights leader Reverend Charles Sherrod before confounding the Southwest Georgia Project for Community Education, whose mission was to help Black people secure access to the polls, to a quality education, and land ownership. In 1969, the couple, along with others, co-founded New Communities, Inc., a 5,735-acre farm in Lee County, Georgia. That was the single largest Black-owned land holding in the country, and its first community land trust. For nearly 15 years, Sherrod and her husband developed and managed this farm where Black farmers were thriving, until drought and discriminatory government land practices led to loan foreclosure and the property's loss. Undaunted, starting in 1985, Sherrod spent the next 25 years serving as the Georgia State Field Director for the Federation and other southern cooperatives, where she organized multiple groundbreaking agriculture projects and initiatives benefiting Black and underserved farmers. In 2009, Sherrod was nominated by the Obama White House to serve as the first Black Georgia Director of Rural Development for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The following year, the administration asked for her resignation after a conservative blog site deceptively edited a speech of hers to appear she was prejudiced against white farmers. Once the truth came to light, and despite profuse apologies and a new job offer from the Obama administration, Sherrod chose to return home to resume her work with Black farmers. In 2011, she and her husband acquired a 1,638-acre plantation outside Albany that serves as a headquarters for the Sherrod Institute. From the Institute's helm, Sherrod serves President, Executive Director, and Chief Fundraiser for its member organizations that include the Southwest Georgia Project, New Communities Land Trust, and the Charles Sherrod Community Development Corporation. Through their collaboration, Ms. Sherrod oversees a team of professionals that continues to execute the nearest 60-year-old vision and a mission to move Black farmers towards education, access, and economic independence. An alumna of Fort Valley State University, she received her bachelor's at Albany State and master's in community development from Antioch University. A 1993 Kellogg Fellow, she serves on multiple boards, including the Biden administration's USDA Equity Commission. Ms. Sherrod was widowed in October 2022 and has 2 adult children, 5 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Please help me in welcoming Ms. Shirley Sherrod.
You know, I had an uncle who said getting old ain't bad. It's just so inconvenient. And I wish he was living so I could tell him I know exactly what he meant. Thank you. It's an emotional moment for me because I had no idea any of my grandchildren would look at agriculture in terms of a career. I sort of pushed my children on into something else. My son is a Tuskegee graduate, engineering, mechanical engineering. My Dr. Sherrod went to Talladega. Both children went to school in Alabama. And I just didn't encourage them to do what I had been doing, which was hard work. Being a female, working with farmers, especially farmers who, some of them knew my father, and looked at me as a little girl, thinking I couldn't teach them anything, let's say. I remember organizing the first cooperative that I organized, and it was in my home county. Well, these farmers wanted to have a feed a pig project, and I told them in order to get hogs from the heifer project, you had to agree to training. They said, we know how to raise hogs. And at every meeting, I'm telling them, you've got to agree to be trained. And they're telling me they know how to raise hogs. So as bad luck would have it, I say bad luck, the hogs came into one of the cooperatives in Georgia, West Georgia Farmers Co-op, and we had to go up and get them. And the farmers had to decide who would get the first hogs. With that project, you would have to give 2 for 1. So if you got a 5 sows and a boar, you had to pass on 12 of the offsprings from those hogs. Well, we picked up the hogs and the farmers got them, and the next day the guy from the Health Project came. And he wanted to go to these farms. The first farm was awful. When I tell you all, it was awful. It was awful. We went to the second one, probably worse than the first one. And the third farmer had bragged in every meeting about raising hogs on concrete. And I almost said to the guy, we're about to go to the best one now. I'm so glad I didn't say that. Because we got there and he had the hogs separated. They were in a pasture where water was running out there. And he's proudly saying, that water is coming from my kitchen sink. And then there was glass everywhere, in the fields. Oh my goodness. So the guy from the Heifer Project said, the farmer said, you want to see my other hogs? He's so proud. And the hogs were lying under a peanut wagon that was under a shed. So he's trying to call them up and they wouldn't move. He had to go, he went and kicked them after a while because he put feed out and they didn't come. He kicked them and they got on up, but they were hopping. Like, oh my goodness. Then he said, I have hogs on concrete. You want to see that? Well, we walked over to where that was, and the concrete was all broken. They could have been cutting themselves, and then the water that was drifting on them was going out and other hogs were wallowing in it. So the guy pulled me to the side and he said, there are some major issues here. I said, please let me tell you. I didn't want him to think I didn't know better. So I said, if you give me a chance now, I can try to get the training set up. I called the University of Georgia and the guy wouldn't even talk to me. Okay, Fort Valley had a limited number of agents, and so I couldn't get anyone. But y'all, I came from a farming family. I had uncles who were my father farmed, and I had uncles who were extension agents or vocational ag teachers. So I knew how to raise hogs. And the worst, I could have kicked myself for not going to those farms first, but just going on what they said. Anyway, I went into my next meeting and I started training. And I started talking about when to clip eye teeth and when to castrate. I don't think I could have performed the castration for them, but I could tell them all about it. Then they said, you know how to raise hogs, don't you? And I never had any more trouble with these farmers. They listened to everything I said. We had a great project going. I did business plans, and it was hard to get them to keep records in the way they needed to keep them. So I had VISTA volunteers, and that was what I used the VISTA volunteers to do. And I also had them, they were pulling the farmers together in 15 counties. I had VISTA volunteers in 15 counties, and I used 2 vocational ag teachers as my extension agents. So we had a whole project going. We could organize cooperatives. We could organize, I could get them to go to ELP, even took them to Farm Aid, some of them, each year. What I learned about farmers, they were not sharing with each other the successes with the crop. Let's say they had a great peanut crop. Didn't tell anybody else. But once I started getting them to meet and talk with each other and look at working together, then they would share and talk about the things that they could do together, whether it was raising vegetables to sell cooperatively or doing other work in their communities. And I would say to the young people going out there, and I say to our staff back in Georgia all the time, I was always looking for what else. You go into, maybe you went for one thing today, but you saw something else and got an idea from that you could sort of share with farmers. So you can't just think of going into an area and that's the only thing you deal with. I saw in Brooks County, Georgia, our farmers were growing really great vegetables. But there was a state-run auction market in Thomasville, Georgia. And the buyers were not buying directly from them. They would buy, if a black farmer grew a crop and sold it to a white farmer, that white farmer could harvest it and then take the produce through and get it sold. So there's an opportunity there. Hey, cooperative. You can organize a cooperative. That led to the opportunity to sell in the Boston, Georgia area. We were at one point shipping truckloads of watermelons from Boston, Georgia to Boston, Massachusetts. But it's all because you go into an area and you see opportunity and you work with our people to try to help them take advantage of that opportunity. I'm just so proud that, my son came here. I have 2 granddaughters here at Tuskegee, and one of my sisters graduated from Tuskegee. After my father was murdered, I didn't know whether I would have the opportunity to go to college. My mother was 7 months pregnant, and there were 5 girls. And I have to tell you, during my senior year, my father convinced my mother to try one more time for a boy, because there were 5 girls. Now, we all had boys' nicknames. I was Bill. He wanted a son. So, senior year, my mother's sick all the time, and come to find out she's pregnant. My goal, see, I grew up picking cotton, and doing all that back-breaking work on the farm. My goal was to get as far away from the farm. I didn't want to ever have anything to do with agriculture. After high school, I wanted to get as far away from the farm and Baker County. For the young folk, please look up Baker County, Georgia. And the sheriff who was there, he ruled everything as a landmark case. I just had read a message on my phone if someone's interested in doing a documentary on the murder of Bobby Hall. He was lynched by the sheriff, and the sheriff was convicted of depriving him of his civil rights, and he appealed all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where the conviction was overturned. They said in order to find him guilty, you'd have to prove that as he was murdering Bobby Hall, he was thinking of murdering him. So the whole issue of proven intent, if you get a chance to look up that case because it impacts us even today, you have to prove intent. But anyway, growing up in a county like that and working on the farm, I didn't want to have anything to do with farming and agriculture again in my life. And once my father was murdered, I made the decision. I'm the oldest of 6 now, there were 5. The baby was a boy. My father didn't get a chance to see him because he was born 2 months after my father's death. But I made a commitment to stay in the South and devote my life to working for a change. You can find good, meaningful work in the South, in rural areas, on farms, working with people who help us to eat each and every day, but people who have held on to land that our foreparents coming out of slavery were able to get, and that we have been just, going from over 15 acres to 15 million acres down to maybe 2 million acres today. It's shameful on us. And it's on us to try to take that land that's left, increase, get more. There's so much if you just take the opportunity and the chance to look at what's there, to see what you can do to help make it better, to see what you can do working with others to make it better. And as I said earlier, to know that 2 of my grandchildren chose Tuskegee, 2 of them agriculture. You just don't know what it meant to me because I had no idea. They lived in Montreal, they lived in Iowa, they lived in Georgia some, and never told me until they were actually doing it. So it's an emotional thing for me. So I don't want to talk too long, but I really want to thank you. When I listened to the work of Campbell, I didn't know his history, but I was, I guess, on a path to try to do some of the same things, but it was based on having that early training that I didn't know I was having, dealing with my grandparents and my father, my uncles, and so forth, because agriculture was it. We were landowners. I didn't appreciate it then. I didn't appreciate it till many years later when I actually, I was not in the cotton field then. I wish I had been able to appreciate it back then. It's hard to appreciate picking cotton. And I tell you, picking butterbeans is even worse. You bend over even more. But, holding on to the land, that early training that I received sitting under my grandfather's oak tree, I didn't appreciate that until many years later. He had benches and so forth, and we all gathered there. We would go to church on Sunday and come back there, and I just really, in later years after my father's death, I got it. And I've tried to pass that on to my children and grands. But thank you so much for this honor. I could go on and on, I've been out there 60 years. years now, working and still at it. So there's so many stories and so forth, but thank you.
And now as we continue our program,